Welcome to Close the Gap, where we thoughtfully engage with CEOs and top industry leaders all working to close the female equity gap in the C-suite and boardroom. Christine Gannon, the CEO of Brightworks Consulting, and Dr. Antoinette Farmer-Thompson, a senior leader with Arizona State University, host insightful conversations responsible for moving the needle for female participation in the C-suite.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Close the Gap. I'm Christine Gannon and here with my co-host, Dr. Tony Farmer-Thompson, and we couldn't be more honored to have Latasha Causey with us this morning. Welcome, Latasha.
Good morning. Thank you.
Latasha is the Vice President of Human Resources at Bell Bank, South Region Markets, with oversight of human resources activities, including the culture and diversity efforts, which we're going to enjoy talking about today. She offices in Phoenix and works with Bell's team in Arizona, as well as New Mexico, Kansas, Missouri, Tennessee, and Florida. Latasha has over 20 years experience in recruiting and human resources leadership. And prior to joining Bell Bank, Latasha worked for 12 years at USAA's North Phoenix campus. She held various leadership roles and was responsible for strengthening USAA's brand and culture in the Phoenix market. She was also responsible for leading the USAA local foundation and employee volunteerism in the Phoenix community. Latasha holds a bachelor's degree in communications from Arizona State University, a Master of Arts degree with a concentration in organizational management, and a professional human resources certification. Latasha is married to her wonderful husband, Sullivan. They have two beautiful boys, and she is incredibly active in the Phoenix community, being named a 2018 Outstanding Women in Business by the Phoenix Business Journal. So glad to have you here, Latasha.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you guys today.
Fantastic. Latasha, first of all, you're mentioning 20 years. You don't look old enough. But let's go with my first question. When I think about all that Christine described in your bio, can you share with us, because you know our book is called Constitutional Grit and Executive Women Grit. When I think about your background, I'm curious if you can share some of the highlights and milestones from your career, but particularly those that were kind of gritty moments for you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that question, and thank you for the compliment. I did start my career, as you talk about grit, I started my career very young. I started in high school. So, I was part of a school to careers program that Charles Schwab had a partnership with Inroads. I was one of 4 students that was selected to participate in the Inroads program. And they were going to select 3 students to be stockbrokers, and then 1 was going to be in people services. I knew for sure that I did not want to be a stockbroker. So I took option B, which was people services, which translates to human resources. So I was in a very fortunate situation to be able to start my career so early. But when you talk about grit, I had to work for it. I worked really hard. I went to school full-time at Arizona State. So by the time I graduated from high school, I was a Charles Schwab employee, an official employee, because due to the FINRA regulations, you cannot work there until you are 18 years old. And so when I turned 18, I was working at Charles Schwab, and then I was going to school full-time. My plan was not to be in human resources. It was actually to live in New York and be an anchor on Good Morning America. That's what I was going to do with my life. So instead, I started this journey in human resources, and it just took off from there. And I was able to really, perform, show up every day, even though I had 2 things going at once, which was a full-time job and a full-time student. I didn't want to give up either of those things. And so I really had to work for all of that, oftentimes being the youngest person at the table. We won't even talk about being the person of color at the table, but just the youngest person at the table, goes a long way as well. So I've had plenty of opportunities to learn and grow in my career.
Let's stay with your career for a minute and talk about your current role at Bell Bank. This is a newer role for you, which you're knocking it out of the ballpark. We see you doing some amazing things, but let's talk a little bit about your role related to diversity and culture. You have a role at Bell Bank where you're responsible for that. Can you talk a little bit about your role, and then also what types of best practices have you found throughout your career where companies are doing this really well?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that question, Christine. From a Bell Bank perspective, as you mentioned, we are newer to the market here on a portion of our business, I should say. Our mortgage business has been in Arizona for over 25 years, but we're in an expansion mode on the banking side, expanding to multiple markets and locations here in Arizona. And so we are really focused on our culture. Bell Bank has been around for years, since 1966. And so we really are making sure that our culture in Arizona is integrated into the broader Bell Bank culture. And by way of doing that, we make sure that we are hiring a diverse group of individuals that are there and that are our employees and that reflect the communities that we live and work in. So from a Bell perspective, we're just getting started. But the second portion of your question on organizations who have done it right, I think that there are a ton of organizations who are just willing to have the conversation. I think it simply starts with that. So you start to have the conversation, you accept that diversity is a thing, and that it is a thing that needs to be talked about and something that needs to be represented, so that all of the employees that you have, all of your customers, because we can't forget that most organizations have a consumer that's associated with them. And so you want to be reflective of those individuals that you are supporting as well as a consumer. And so, there are multiple ways and multiple avenues in order to make that happen. Sometimes it's having diversity groups, sometimes it's just having conversations, and sometimes it's having action on certain things that are going on within the community.
Fantastic. And as we think about culture and the disproportionate impact of the pandemic on women, how would you coach women, and what types of policies and support mechanisms do you think are important to support women to really push through 2021 strong and really just return back to the workforce or return to their aspirations within the workforce?
Absolutely. Well, to be honest, 2020 taught us flexibility, understanding, and grace. So not only as an employer, but as well as an individual and yourself. I think us as women, we take on a whole lot, whether it's, being a wife, whether it's being a mother, whether it's being a corporate career woman, or the like, any of those things, we take on all of it on our shoulders. And we know that we have support systems and those around us. But what we have to do is we have to ask for help. We have to, it's okay to say, let me take a second. Let me take a breather here because I can't do it all. And I think that employers have to recognize that. And I think employers have recognized that. I think you have more individuals that are working from home, more individuals that have flexible work schedules, so that perhaps if now their if their children are back in school, they are able to do a drop off and pick up because perhaps they're not comfortable with after or before care. It's not the same as it was before. And that is what organizations have to recognize and have to know, is that it's not the same as it was at the beginning of 2020, because not all of 2020 was a pandemic, right? It happened and it hit us like a ton of bricks, and very quickly. And so we all had to adjust. It pushed us to be a little bit more innovative in a quicker amount of time. Sometimes we say, oh, well, we're going to get to that next quarter, or we're going to get to that next year. 2020 did not allow us that opportunity as corporations nor individuals. So I think that companies have to take a moment, take a breather. So instead of referring people strictly just to the EAP programs that we all have, as a leader, as a coworker, as a peer, it takes all of us to step up for women, but as well men as well. Men, my husband he works full time as well, and has a wife that works full time, and he took a majority of the kids being at home in school, and so having that balance of the two, because it could go either way, but it really really takes flexibility and understanding.
Absolutely. There were so many amazing nuggets in what you said. I could go deeper on so many things. Couple things I wanted to pull out related to women. Whether women have families or not, they still bear the brunt of taking care of personal things. So whether it's aging parents or friends that need additional support, especially with family, women still bear the brunt of that. And I think employers, to your point, are seeing that women have options. I mean, we had 2 million women leave the workforce during COVID, and I'm sure that's not the final number we'll see, but they left because it's too much, right? Mm-hmm. It's just too much. And so I think, to your point, employers being flexible, understanding that, you know, work and life is an integration. We probably will never find balance, but an integration of those two things. So I appreciate what you shared. It's a lot of great information for our audience. I want to talk a little bit about your career. Let's go back to your career and Tony's great question about grit. Talk to us a little bit about self-talk. You had to have some kind of self-talk that propelled you to where you are today. How can women do that better, best?
Yes. Well, we all have self-talk, right? I have a lot of self-talk on my commutes to and from work, and it's really a matter of balance for me personally. I am a very faithful person. I definitely believe in something much higher than myself, my family as well. We are all very faith-based, and so I take that first, and I think that that's how I get through most things. But at the same time, when there is a bad day or when there is a moment of here I am, you know, being extremely negative, and I know that when I have that negative talk, it's reflective. Even if I try to fake it, I know that people can see that, and I'm aware. So I think it takes some time for you to become aware of those things and become aware of what you're doing. I always say, when I'm in this space of negative talk, or I could have done this better, or I could have done that better, I always tell myself, just give yourself a breather, right? Give yourself a break for a moment, just for a moment. We all make mistakes. We all want to do better in certain avenues and areas. So now it's just a matter of what are you going to do with that? So do that, right? And have a more positive outlook. So I am a pretty positive person just in general. I think that there are a lot of things that we could worry about and have our energy spent on. I'd rather spend my energy on positive things and move from there. And I always say I surround myself with people who also think the same. I think that when you, not the same in regards to we're all on the same page, but think the same in terms of positivity. You know, when we surround ourselves in that environment, if you're in a negative environment, you're going to be negative, period, right? And it takes a lot of energy out of you. But when you're in a positive environment, it just allows you the opportunity to get energized. So that's what I choose to do. And I tend to catch myself. I do have negative talk, or I do at times take a moment where I'm like, oh, please get over it and let's move on. Have short-term memory and let's go. And so you know, it's a balancing act. So I will always tell women, hey, just take it easy on yourself and recognize when you are in that moment of that negative talk or that negative reflection, you know, just like you would try to convince your friends of otherwise, convince yourself as well. And just take a moment to do that.
Such good advice.
Yeah, very, very good advice. And as you think about along the lines of your career, part of our book is about how do we accelerate and proliferate women in leadership positions, particularly the C-suite. And so as you think about advice that you would give to women, so that you could create almost an algorithm of success or reverse engineer Latasha, what advice would you give to women in terms of their career and methodology for pursuing the C-suite?
Absolutely. Well, I think that there are a couple of things. One, it is just about building your network, right? I mean, I think as women, we have so much going on that we forget to build our own network. So I say, one, start there, both an internal network and an external network of your organizations, and be purposeful and planful about those. Follow through with the things that you say you're going to do. I say as well, get involved in your community. You never realize how many skills you learn when you are philanthropically giving back. And that doesn't mean money, that means your time and your effort. When you are on a board or not, if you're just on an advisory committee and you're utilizing your skill set, other people see you differently outside of your organization, and you're building something bigger in regards to your education as well as your skill set just in general. So I say think differently about the workforce. So some of us as women, I'm in human resources, so everything that someone like me would do would be to just focus strictly on HR, go to HR events, go do all of those types of things. Well, I chose not to do that. I chose to do things that are outside of my comfort zone, go in networks and groups of people that I normally wouldn't and I wouldn't normally see, because that builds just a better future for yourself. But then, to be honest, it builds a better future for those that are coming after you as well. So I have decided as well a long time ago to make sure that I am a mentor of young girls. And I use mentor loosely. I just really like to connect and how can I help, whether it's, anything from the maintenance of your look to the to making sure that that if a boy can do it, a girl can do it too, right? So just any of those types of things that I can do as I'm helping build the next generation of women. But then even women that have had over 20 years of HR experience like myself, I take a responsibility upon myself to make sure that they also have a seat at the table. So if it's a board that I'm serving on and they're looking for another woman or another board member, make it a woman, right? So building my network and making sure that I grow those individuals as well, or present them with opportunities that I have perhaps been presented with.
Excellent.
Wonderful. So Latasha, as we wrap up today, talk to us a little bit about the best advice you've been given in your career. What's something that has stood the test of time for you?
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the things for me has been, I had a leader at USAA that gave me the best feedback. So, USAA is a very militant, very structured company. I had elevated very quickly to a position, the financial services industry in general is very male dominated. And so my boss, who was a male, one of the best bosses I had, he said, Elsie, when you come to work every day as your authentic self, everyone just naturally follows you, listens to you. You just command a level of presence that you don't even know that you have, and inspiration that you know that you have. He said, but that comes with an obligation. He said, the obligation is that you are always authentic and true to yourself, no matter what and no matter what room you enter into. And so I have made sure that I stuck to that advice, and it stuck with me because I don't think that we all realize when we are, or when we go into our zone of us not being our true authentic selves. Sometimes we're on, if you will, and I think that there are that advice has just stuck with me of like, hey, you show up every day and just be who you are, and good things will happen.
So last question very quickly. Speaking of being an inspiration, who inspires you?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's there are multiple people that inspire me. It's even from my husband that inspires me every day as a genuine partner in all that we do, and having young boys, and really being able to both work the way that we do and raising these young kids, but as well my parents. They have been they're still married, been married my whole life, and they have taken a significant role in helping us raise our children. We would not be able to work the way that we do today if we did not have that and did not have that foundation and that support system. So I really, the individuals that inspire me the most are those that are in my circle and in my family circle that really push me and keep me going to continue to elevate both in my professional and personal life.
Wonderful.
Very good. Latasha, so thankful that you were able to come on today. Appreciate all your insights and all the advice that you shared.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad to be here with both of you this morning.
Thank you for listening. You can find more information and connect with Christine or Tony at www.tffei.org or on LinkedIn at the Foundation for Female Equity and Inclusion.